I'll read the transcript file first to understand the original story's structure and emotional beats before writing. The transcript file isn't accessible, but I have the analysis documents and thumbnail image in context. Let me now do the full analysis first, then write the story. Fawn Teach Video K19280061 Seong TH Kanach Seonga Cấu trúc kể chuyện Hook mở đầu tense đầu. Transcript analysis cho thấy opening bắt đầu bằng mô tả cảm giác vật lý, not the comfortable kind, not the quiet of a Sunday morning or the stillness before rain. Tức là hook bằng âm thanh, làm giác bất thường, kéo người nghe vào không gian trước khi giải thích context. Không nêu nhân vật, không nêu tình huống, chỉ tạo cảm giác có gì đó không bình thường đang xảy ra. Cấu trúc 3 hồi siết phấp, 0-29 phút. Giới thiệu nhân vật chính, người cha đơn thân, garage nhỏ, cuộc sống bình thường nhưng có chiều sâu. Xây dựng bối cảnh Millionaire và chiếc Ferrari bí ẩn 5 năm không ai sửa được. Conflict đâm 24/125 phút. Người cha được thuê hoặc tự tìm đến, đối mặt với sự hoài nghi, áp lực. Con gái Lily làm bài tập trong garage là chi tiết được bình luận nhắc đến. Đây là emotional anchor, giúp câu chuyện không chỉ là sửa xe, mà là về phẩm giá và sự tận tụy. Resolution 125-147 phút. Ferrari nổ máy. Cảnh Maria ra từ nhà Trinh, lao tay vào khăn đứng sững. Gardeners drifted over. Đây là public vindication moment. Điểm catharsis tập thể. Emotional beats. Tò mò. Ferrari 5 năm không ai sửa được. Mystery hook, đồng cảm. Người cha đơn thân, con gái ngồi làm bài tập trong garage. Người xem gắn với hình ảnh gia đình bức xúc thay. Sự hoài nghi từ giới chuyên gia thế giới của Millionaire, nhìn thường người thường catharsis. Tiếng động cơ Ferrari vang lên. Mọi người đứng sững, payoff cảm xúc ấm lòng. Kết thúc không phải revenge mà là quiet dignity. Kiểu không cần hét tâu, thực lực tự nói pacing, chậm và atmospheric ở setup, xây dựng cảm giác tăng tốc ở conflict khi deadline áp lực xuất hiện, chậm lại có chú ý ở resolution để khán giả thở ra cùng nhân vật. B. Giữ chân khán giả, mystery xuyên suốt, tại sao 5 năm không ai sửa được? Câu hỏi này không được giải đáp sớm, kéo người xem đến cuối. Cliffhanger giữa video. Có thể là thời điểm người cha tưởng thất bại deadline đến gần Millionaire hết kiên nhẫn. Twist bài học cuối. Không phải twist bất ngờ về plot mà là twist cảm xúc. Người tưởng bình thường nhất lại là người giải được bài toán mà experts bó tay. Bài học expertise thật sự không cần danh hiệu. C. Điểm mạnh and yếu. Điểm mạnh cần ghi ý. Chi tiết cụ thể. Cảm giác vật lý. Nghe người chạm. Làm không gian sống động. Hình ảnh con gái làm bài trong garage. Emotional anchor cực mạnh. Public vindication moment. Cảnh mọi người đứng sững khi xe nổ máy tone. Không phán xét. Không sáo rỗng. Kể những người trong cuộc điểm yếu cần cải thiện. Lập từ vựng, vocabulary richness chỉ 18-97. Cần đa dạng hơn một số bình luận phàn nàn too many repeats. Cần tránh echo, confirm lại thông tin video dài 147 phút. Đề xuất cắt 20%. Cần viết compact hơn, không dài dòng hài. Patented gay and thumbnail. Tiêu đề gok. For 5 years, no expert could fix a billionaire's Ferrari until a quiet single dad tried pattern long thức số liệu cụ thể. 5 years, tạo cảm giác scale thời gian dài contrast đối lập, expert nhiều uy tín versus. Single dad, một mình bình thường, quiet cảm xúc, quiet, ngụ ý khiêm tốn ẩn mình, không phô trương cấu trúc. Thời gian lất thất bại của người mạnh, until người yếu hơn thành công độ dài. 75 ký tự dài vừa đủ để kể mini story trong tiêu đề, hook point, từ until. Đây là pivot của toàn bộ tiêu đề. Tạo contrast và gây tò mò tức thì. B thumbnail, concept. Woman in red dress, power, wealth. Pointing confronting a mechanic in coveralls holding a broom, ordinary man. Ferrari door phía sau contrast. Luxury versus working class, aggression versus. Quiet dignity tone. Drama cao, nhưng mechanic không sợ hãi, chỉ im lặng bố cục. Hai nhân vật đối lập hai bên, xe ở giữa làm điểm focal không có chữ trên thumbnail, hoặc rất ít, hình ảnh tự nói lên 3. NHUQKNGA, từ comment nỗi đau trầm cảm. Sự hoài nghi của xã hội với người bình thường. Nhiều người tự thấy mình trong hình ảnh mechanic bị đánh giá thấp, thắc mắc chưa giải đáp. Cụ thể vấn đề kỹ thuật Ferrari là gì? Comment về Testarossa Flat 12 Engine cho thấy người xem muốn hiểu thêm về chi tiết kỹ thuật thật. Mong muốn. Kết cục người tốt thắng không phải revenge mà là quiet vindication. Comment được like nhiều. Chủ yếu là location shoutouts khán giả, gắn kết cá nhân với câu chuyện. This needs to become a movie go. Chuyện đủ cinematic, like Atlas Shrugged. Khán giả sophisticated. Thích chiều sâu điểm tranh cãi. Mechanic trong ảnh thumbnail bị chỉ ra inconsistency, seatbelt, gear and neutral. Khán giả chú ý chi tiết thật, cần viết chi tiết kỹ thuật believable hơn bôn. Made that ensue to Khoa Ching. Ferrari repair, single dad, billionaire, expert failed, mechanic, quiet hero the loại. Redemption underdog story, cùng dòng với Quiet Man proves himself, genre target audience. 45 70 tuổi, thiên về Nam, thích câu chuyện có chiều sâu đạo đức. Không phải drama giật gần. Audience Canada Mi UCC, thấy rõ từ location comments, watch time. Giữ bằng mystery kỹ thuật plus emotional investment vào nhân vật gia đình Nam. Đề xuất show, video mời. Dĩ nhiên, cấu trúc tri hồi, setup, ordinary man's small garage, child present. Conflict, wealthy client, public doubt, deadline. Resolution, public vindication moment hook. Bắt đầu bằng cảm giác vật lý, âm thanh bất thường. Không giải thích ngay emotional anchor. Con hoặc người thân nhỏ tuổi, hiện diện trong không gian làm việc của nhân vật chính pay off. Public moment. Nhiều người chứng kiến khoảnh khắc thành công, tone, không phán xét, không sáo rỗng, không sentimental quá mức bề. Thay đổi hoàn toàn nhân vật. Tên mới hoàn toàn khác list đã dùng xe. Vẫn là xe cổ X sang, nhưng có thể khác. Ferrari, hoặc giữ Ferrari nhưng model bối cảnh khác bối cảnh. Small Town Canada thay vì Generic American chi tiết kỹ thuật, cụ thể và believable hơn để đáp ứng khán giả tech savvy. Bổ sung, thêm chi tiết kỹ thuật thực tế, đáp ứng comment về engine specs, làm rõ hơn backstory của nhân vật chính, vì sao rời industry lớn về garage nhỏ, giảm repetition, mỗi thông tin chỉ nói một lần đi. SEO giữ pattern, thời gian plus thất bại tập thể, until người bình thường thành công từ khóa, vintage car, classic car, widower father, small town mechanic, expert stump tiêu đề mới gợi ý, for 3 years. No one could start a Millionaire's Aston Martin, until the widower down the road did đuôi đây là chuyện mới. The sound came first, not the engine, that came later, and when it did, 3 people standing in the driveway stopped mid-sentence and forgot what they'd been saying. The sound that came first was subtler. It was the sound of a wrench set down on concrete, slowly, the way you set something down when you've just understood something that took you a long time to understand. Theodore Brask heard it himself and didn't move for a moment. He was crouched beside the rear wheel arch of a 1971 Aston Martin DB6, the kind of car that didn't belong in a town like Merritt, British Columbia, and probably knew it. The car had arrived on a flatbed 6 weeks earlier, covered in a canvas tarp that the driver had treated with more ceremony than was strictly necessary. Brask had watched from the open bay door of his garage, coffee in hand, as the tarp came off. He hadn't said anything. He rarely did. His daughter had said enough for both of them. She was 9 years old and standing in the garage doorway in her school clothes, backpack still on, and when the DB6 came into view, she'd said, "That's the prettiest broken thing I've ever seen." Brask had looked at her. She'd shrugged. "It's broken, right? Or you wouldn't have it." She was correct on both counts. The car belonged to a man named Aldous Vance, which sounded like a name from a novel and suited him accordingly. Vance had made his money in natural resources, the kind of money that doesn't need to explain itself. And he had spent a portion of it collecting automobiles the way other men collect grievances, methodically, without apparent joy, and with great attention to what was rare. The DB6 was the rarest thing in his collection and the only one that didn't run. It hadn't run in 4 years. Vance had tried everyone. That wasn't an exaggeration made for effect. It was simply true. He had sent the car to a restoration shop in Vancouver that charged by the hour and had a waiting list. They'd kept it for 7 months and returned it with a written report that was technically impressive and practically useless. He'd flown in a specialist from England, a man who had worked on Aston Martins for 30 years and who spoke about the DB6's straight-six engine the way a minister speaks about scripture. The Englishman had spent 4 days with the car and left on the 5th morning without saying much. There had been a mechanic in Calgary who'd worked on vintage British cars his whole career, and a retired engineer in Victoria who'd written a self-published book about classic Aston Martin electrical systems. Neither of them had fixed it. The car wouldn't start. More precisely, the car would almost start, would turn over, would fire briefly, would give every indication of being about to start, and then wouldn't. It was, by all accounts, the most expensive almost in Aldous Vance's considerable experience of the world. He'd heard about Brask from a man named Doug Pellerin, who ran the fuel dock at the marina outside town and who had an opinion on most subjects. Pellerin had told Vance, in the particular way that small-town people recommend each other, reluctantly, as if sharing something they'd rather keep, that there was a man on the edge of town who used to work for one of the big automotive engineering firms in Ontario, who'd come back to Merritt after his wife died. who now ran a one-bay garage and charged reasonable rates and didn't say much. "He's not flashy," Pellerin had said, "but he's the kind of guy who doesn't get stuck." Vance had been skeptical. He was often skeptical. It had served him well. But 4 years and 5 specialists had worn something down in him, and so he'd called the number Pellerin had given him, and the man who answered had listened to the problem without interrupting, and then said he'd take a look. That was 6 weeks ago. Brask had not, in those 6 weeks, fixed the car. He had also not panicked, not called anyone for help, and not billed for a single hour of labor. What he had done was spend a great deal of time sitting beside the car, looking at it, which was not a method that any of the previous specialists had employed. His daughter Nora had pointed this out one evening. She was doing homework at the workbench. This had been their arrangement since she was 6, since the garage was warm and had better light than the kitchen, and Brask worked better when she was nearby, and she'd looked up from her math and said, "You're not doing anything." "I'm thinking," he said. "You've been thinking for 2 weeks. It's a complicated problem." She considered this. What's complicated about it? He'd tried to explain it simply, the way he did with everything she asked about. The engine turned over. The ignition fired. The fuel was reaching the carburetors. The timing was correct, or appeared correct. Every system, inspected individually, was functional, and yet the car wouldn't sustain. It would catch and die, as if something was interrupting the process at the last moment. Every previous mechanic had chased the obvious culprits: fuel delivery, ignition timing, carburetor sync, and found nothing definitive. "So it's like when I can't fall asleep," Nora had said. He'd looked at her. "Everything's fine," she said, "but it still doesn't work. Usually it's because something small is wrong and I can't figure out what." He'd thought about that longer than he expected to. The thing about Theodore Brask, and this was a thing that people in Merit knew without being able to articulate, was that he thought differently about systems than most people did. He had spent 12 years as a powertrain engineer at a firm in Mississauga, working on problems that required holding an entire mechanical chain in your head at once, understanding not just what each component did, but how they influenced each other in sequence, in time, under varying conditions. He'd been good at it. He'd been, by most internal measures, exceptional at it. Then Carol had died, and none of that had seemed to matter very much. He'd come back to Merritt, Carol's town, where her parents still lived, where Nora had cousins, and opened the garage because he needed something to do with his hands, and the town needed a reliable mechanic. He charged fair rates. He didn't talk much. He was exactly what Doug Pellerin had described, and he didn't think about his former career unless someone gave him a reason to. The DB6 had given him a reason. What he'd been doing, those 6 weeks, was not just inspecting systems. He had been reconstructing the car's history. He'd pulled every document Vance could provide, which was considerable. The original build sheet from the Newport Pagnell factory, service records spanning 5 decades, the acquisition paperwork, the records from the Vancouver shop, and from the English specialist. He'd read all of it. He'd created a timeline on a piece of paper that was now taped to the wall above the workbench, which Nora had examined with interest and pronounced the most complicated calendar I've ever seen. He was looking for a pattern, not in any one system, but across time. He found it on a Tuesday, which was unremarkable in every other respect. Nora was at school. The garage was quiet except for the radio, which was playing something he wasn't listening to. He was reading through the English specialist report for the 3rd time, and he stopped at a line he had read twice before without registering its significance. The specialist had noted, in passing, that the fuel pump showed signs of previous replacement. The replacement pump was not original to the car. It was a later unit, aftermarket, fitted sometime in the late 1980s based on the parts stamp. The specialist had noted this and moved on. It wasn't, on its face, unusual. Replacement parts happened. The pump was functional. Brask set the report down. He sat with the idea for a while. The original SU fuel pump in a DB6 maintained a specific and quite particular pressure. The aftermarket replacement, and he spent 2 hours that afternoon confirming this through the service manuals he'd ordered from a supplier in England, delivered fuel at a pressure that was on its own perfectly acceptable for a car of that era, except that sometime in the intervening years the carburetors had been rebuilt. Not replaced, rebuilt, with needle valves and float settings calibrated to the original pump's output. On paper, Both pump and carburetors were functional. In practice, under sustained load, the pressure mismatch created a condition where the float chambers would overfill, flood the engine briefly, and kill the combustion cycle. It happened fast enough that it looked like an ignition problem. It happened consistently enough to defeat everyone who was looking for a mechanical fault, rather than an interaction between two separately correct systems. The car didn't have a broken part. It had two perfectly functional parts that had been modified at different times by different people who hadn't known about each other, and the combination of them, under specific conditions, produced a fault that no single system inspection would find. Brask drove to the parts supplier in Kamloops the next morning, which took 40 minutes each way. He rebuilt the carburetor float settings that afternoon. He reinstalled everything the following morning. Nora came after school and sat at the workbench and watched him, which was unusual. She typically read or did homework and didn't watch. Something about the way he was moving told her this time was different. He got into the car. He didn't say anything to her. He turned the key. The engine fired. It kept firing. The sound that came up through the floor of the garage was different from anything that space had produced before. Deeper, more settled, a sound with history in it. 50 years of engineering expressing itself at the right pressure and temperature for the first time in 4 years. Nora stood up from the workbench and didn't move. She was looking at her father, not the car, the way children look at a parent when they see them do something they didn't fully know they could do. Brask sat in the running car for a moment. He wasn't triumphant. That wasn't in him. He was, more than anything, satisfied in the quiet way of a man who has understood something correctly. He got out and turned the engine off and went to the sink to wash his hands. "Dad," Nora said. He looked at her. "That was it?" "That was it." She thought about this. "Can I tell Mrs. Kaminsky tomorrow?" She asked what you were working on. "You can tell her." He called Aldous Vance that evening, which was a Thursday. Vance arrived the following Saturday with 2 people from his staff, a woman named Iris, who handled his affairs, and a younger man whose role was unclear, but who photographed things on his phone. They arrived at 10 in the morning. Brask had the garage door open, and the DB6 pulled forward into the light, which gave the car a particular quality that it earned. Deep green with chrome catches, the proportions exactly right, the body unmarked. Vance walked around it without speaking. He was a tall man in his late 60s, gray-haired, with the careful posture of someone who had learned to be still. He stopped at the rear of the car and looked at it for a long time. "Start it," he said. Brask started it. Vance didn't move for the duration of what happened next, which was simply the engine running. The flat, sustained growl of the inline-six at idle, the sound slightly rough at first, and then smoothing as it warmed. The woman named Iris stopped writing something on her tablet. The younger man stopped taking photographs. The 2 men who worked on Vance's grounds crew and had been passing on the road paused and stood at the edge of the driveway without being invited. Vance listened to the engine for perhaps 3 minutes. Then he walked to where Brask was standing, and he said something that Brask didn't repeat widely, didn't repeat to anyone, in fact, except Nora that evening when she asked what Vance had said. He said, "Thank you." Nora processed this. Just that? He also said he'd been starting to think the car would never run again. "And what did you say?" Brask thought about it. "I said it just needed someone to look at the whole thing at once." Nora seemed to find this satisfying. She turned back to her homework. Outside, through the small window above the workbench, the sky over the mountains east of Merritt had gone the particular pink of a September evening in the BC interior, the kind of light that doesn't last long but is very clear while it does. Brask put the kettle on. The invoice he sent was straightforward. Parts and labor, no premium, nothing added for the 4 years of everyone else's failure or the 6 weeks of his own thinking. Vance paid it the same day, and 2 days later a case of something was delivered that Brask hadn't asked for and didn't need but didn't return. Nora found it interesting. He told her she could have 1 glass of the grape juice they'd included, which she did, and she pronounced it okay but kind of serious. The story moved through Merritt the way stories do in small towns, not quickly, but completely. By the following week, most people who mattered knew that the Vance car had been sitting unsolved for 4 years and that Brask had fixed it in 6 weeks without making any fuss. Doug Pellerin told the story at the marina with a satisfaction that suggested he deserved some credit for it, which he did, after a fashion. No one called Brask exceptional. That wasn't how merit worked. What they said in various ways was that it figured that they'd known for a while he was the kind of man who found things other people missed. A few more people brought their cars in. A man from Kelowna called about a vintage Land Rover. A woman from a ranch outside town asked if he looked at farm equipment. He said he'd take a look. Nora, for her part, added the case to a list she was maintaining in a notebook. A list she'd titled, in her particular 9-year-old way, Things My Dad Fixed That Other People Couldn't. The list had 4 items on it. The Aston Martin was the longest entry, occupying most of a page, with a small drawing of the car at the bottom that was recognizable if you knew what you were looking for. She showed it to him one evening. He read it carefully, the way he read everything. "The drawing's good," he said. "I know," she said. "I'm going to add more." He handed the notebook back and said nothing else, which was how he said most things that mattered. Outside, the last of the September light was pulling away from the mountains. The garage was cool now, and quiet, and smelled of oil and metal, and the particular combination of things that accumulates in a space where a man has spent a long time understanding how things work. The DB6 was gone. Vance's people had collected it that morning, on the same flatbed, with the same canvas tarp handled with the same ceremony. The bay where it had sat for 6 weeks was empty now, which was a different kind of quiet than the quiet before it arrived. Brask stood in the doorway and looked at the space. There was always something next. There was always something broken, waiting to be understood. He'd learned somewhere in the years since Carol that this was not a bad way to live. The slow, patient work of figuring out why things that should work don't, and what it takes to make them run again. He turned off the light. Behind him, in the warm part of the garage, Nora was still writing.